Shabbat Shalom. In this week's Parsha, as has been noted, we encounter a very detailed account of the Bigdei Kodesh, the clothing that the Kohanim, the priests, were commanded to wear. And we learn that they needed to be made by wise people into whom God's wisdom would enter. But really, how do we know exactly how these outfits looked on the people wearing them? Because we all see things and report them back differently. For example, we see color differently. How many of you would admit to being either a little bit or a lot colorblind? What is this techelet color that is described in the Torah? It's mentioned 49 different times. What does blue-violet mean to you? We don't all experience that color the same way. Also from this week's Parsha, is a pomegranate really a pomegranate like we know today? Has the fruit not changed at all since biblical times? And if asked, we would all draw the ephod or the breastplate differently. Even diagrams that are created, probably to scale for teaching purposes, they're all based on the artist's interpretation. And what does this mean? Va'asita bigdei kodesh le'aharon achicha lechavod uletif'aret. Make holy clothing for your brother Aaron for dignity and adornment. Well, I love the phrase, lechavod uletif'aret, and we just heard it in the ending blessings of the Haftarah. I can't really explain what it means. It's way too esoteric for my rational brain. And that's okay. If I understand something one way and you understand it differently. In the Midrash, Rabbi Yanai said, Lo nitnu divrei Torah chatuchim. The Torah was not given in a clear-cut matter. Rabbi Yanai, who lived in the 3rd century in the land of Israel, in that Midrash, he goes on to say that God gave a Torah that could be interpreted nearly 100 different ways. Our inherited tradition encourages disputes and differences of opinion, as evident in this popular Mishnah from Pirkei Avot. Kol machloket shehi l'shem shamayim, sufa lehitkayem, v'she'ena l'shem shamayim, ein sufa lehitkayem. Every dispute that's for the sake of heaven will in the end endure, but one that's not for the sake of heaven will not endure. Which is the controversy that's for the sake of heaven? Such was the controversy of Hillel and Shammai. Hillel and Shammai never spoke to the character or the appearance of their opponents. Rather, they just wanted to uncover the meaning of God and Torah. Their children married each other, and they danced together at simchas. This past Thursday was the 9th of the Hebrew month of Adar. According to tradition, 2,000 years ago-ish, on the 9th of Adar, the usual peaceful and constructive disagreements between the Hillel and Shammai dynasties erupted into a destructive conflict over 18 legal matters. On that day, the disagreements turned so violent that they led to the death of thousands. The day was said to be as tragic as the day the golden calf was created, which we'll read about this coming week. For Beit Hillel and Beit Shammai to have arguments get so out of hand was not the norm. They had more than 300 disagreements between them, but as I shared before, the Mishnah teaches that they exemplified machloket l'shem shamayim, disagreement for the sake of heaven. Most of the time, they conducted their wide-range disagreement with respect and authentic desire for the common good. It was sort of like Reb Steve and I differing on what the pomegranate on the high priest tunic actually looked like when we discussed it. Our medieval sages declared that the 9th of Adar, which was Thursday, the day that the fighting turned ugly, be a fast day. But it wasn't observed. It lay dormant. But it was never lost. The Pardes Center for Judaism and Conflict Resolution, they dreamed up a few years ago the 9 Adar Project to reimagine and repurpose this date when such tragedy occurred. Now, as much as some of us employ the "we don't talk about" approach, a lot of us know from the art of arguing. Raise your head up and down if you've ever argued with someone. Okay, in the room, a lot of people are raising their head up and down. Because we have a history of not agreeing. 2 Jews, 3 opinions. It comes from somewhere. Going back to the Parsha, as we spent time listening to the Torah reading, we probably all envision not only exactly what the clothes look like, but what the actual people, the Kohanim, the priests look like. We probably all see them differently. And I'm certain that how I envision it is right, and you might be sure that how you see it is right too. So what happens next? No matter what age and stage that we are in now, it is imperative that as our world gets more divisive, that we sharpen our tools for respectful arguing. A few years back, Rabbi Daniel Roth of Pardes in Israel, he shared 10 tips for constructive feedback based on the Rambam on Maimonides that he compiled from Hilchot Deot, from chapter 6. I'll share a few. The Rambam wrote, when a person commits a transgression against a fellow person, they should not hate the offender and keep silent. Rather, there is a mitzvah incumbent upon them to inform them and say to them, "Hey, why'd you do such and such to me?" Or, "For what reason did you commit a transgression against me in regard to the specified matter?" From here, we can learn 3 important tips from the Rambam. Number 1, we should not keep our frustration inside. We shouldn't let it fester, because what happens when it festers? It fosters more hatred and more destructive behavior. We need to share how we're feeling. Number 2, it's okay to honestly ask to understand the other person's perspective as to why they may have done or not done what's bothering us. And 3, we should be really specific as possible about what's bothering us and avoid generalizations. The Rambam also wrote, "He who reproves his friend is required to reprove him in private between the other person and himself, to speak gently and in a soft manner, and to make known to him that you are speaking to him only for his benefit." Now, from this we learn we should speak to the person in private, not in front of peers or on the schoolyard. We should speak gently and in a soft manner. And number 6, we should try to explain that we're bringing the issue up in order to help everyone learn and grow from the experience, and not for the sake of hurting anyone. How many of these are we doing already? Can we do better? I think that the 9th of Adar is an important date on the Jewish calendar, because the underlying values and ethics of this day influence every single community with which we affiliate, either by birth or by choice. Because everyone argues, families, classmates, colleagues, friends, boards, and, politicians. And it's rarely done in a constructive conflict. Just picking one news story du jour. Neil Young and Joe Rogan have not been in this room to hear this sermon. Joe Rogan, who spews anti-vax rhetoric, thinks he's right, and most of us know that Neil Young's approach to vaccination is correct. But because their disagreement is not respectful, I currently am not able to listen to the song Southern Man on Spotify. Imagine if they would have talked to each other about the specific issue. Our tradition advocates for machloket l'shem shamayim, and with this kind of argument, one can argue with another person while still respecting and maintaining good relationships with the other. It's so important, especially for spouses and partners at home, because usually you got to go to bed together at the end of the night. When we argue this way, we look for the best solution, not just to win. Too often when we disagree with another person, we speak in absolutes, which leaves no room for back and forth, or shakla v'tarya, which is the Aramaic term for give and take from the Talmud. I'm encouraging all of you who are listening to really make an attempt to listen better and to argue better. Arguing's okay. Just there's a good way to do it, a better way to do it. Let's take the lessons of the 9th of Adar to heart and pay attention to our words. Shabbat Shalom.